In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be discussing the win against Bologna, the Champions League squad, 3-man versus 4-man defense, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Se ne va largo dal destro il tiro, la spinta corta, Milito, e gol, 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 e gol. Attenzione Ronaldo, salta anche Marchegiani e mette dentro il 3-0. Andiamo, il principe entra in area, è solo, il tiro, e gol, e gol, e gol, e gol, e gol. Con Ronaldo a battere questo calcio di punizione molto lungo per Zamorano che gira bene al centro, attenzione il destro, violentissimo e lo spettacolare gol da parte di Zanetti. La prima squadra che vince qua è la nostra Inter, l'Inter vince e dillo, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, i più forti siamo noi. Nulla è impossibile.
Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I am your host Nima welcoming you to another show. We're sorry that we were away last week, but I was violently ill and couldn't record. I could barely talk, so I'm terribly sorry. But we're back now. We're back. We're healthy, and we've just had our first 3 points on the weekend against Bologna. And joining me to discuss this is our very good friend. He's a Serie A commentator for InFront Sports. You know his voice when you hear it. Welcome to Studio Inter again, Mr. Marco Palmieri.
Hello, Nima. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here, and I'm very glad that you're feeling a lot better this week, mate.
Thanks, mate. Right, and we are also joined for the first time this season, our good friend from Italy. He is a match commentator for Nerazzurri.com. Welcome back, Mr. Fulvio Santucci.
Hello, Nima. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here again, and it's good to be back into the Italian Championship, the Serie A.
Absolutely. I've missed the Serie A like hell. Right, and we are also joined by our regular our regular panelist who does all the previews for us on SempreInter, Mr. Mohamed Welcome.
Hi everyone. Good to be back. Thanks.
And we're also joined, last but not least, by our very own SempreInter and Serpents of Madonnina's own Mr. Will Beckman.
Good evening. Glad to see you're fighting fit again, Nima.
Yeah, I was not well last week. I'm really sorry about that. Let's not linger too much about that. Let's go into things that are much more nicer to talk about, namely the fact that Inter took their first win of the season. Again, three matches into the Serie A season against Bologna away in what turned out to be a rather emphatic and clear win after goals from Nainggolan, Candreva of all people, and also Ivan Perisic. Marco, your colleague, Mr. Richard Whittle, I think, was commenting this game. What are your thoughts when you were watching the game about how Inter performed? Did you think it was a 3-0 was a little bit too much? Are numbers that maybe flatter Inter, or what are your thoughts?
I did watch the game. I thought it was an entertaining match in the end, actually. I thought Bologna, who have not started well at all this season, really needed to turn their season around, and they failed to do so. I think they weren't very impressive, and Inzaghi's got a lot of work to do there. But Inter, the main difference with their match this weekend was obviously Raja Nainggolan. He is the signing that is, I think, going to turn into season around. It's a shame that he was missing the first 2 matches, and I don't know if it's a bit of a coincidence that it was his first match back, and it was the first match that Icardi didn't play in, but and just happens to be the first win of the season. But Inter definitely have a superstar in Raja Nainggolan, and he definitely turned the match around for them.
I couldn't agree more. Mo, do you have any questions for Marco?
Yeah, Marco. So, we saw a pretty good half last week from Inter in the first half against Torino. We saw a very sterile Inter against Sassuolo. And again, we saw a very sterile Inter against Bologna in the first half this week. And I couldn't help but like the striking resemblance between the side of last year in those dark months until Rafinha really came into the side. What is it about Inter that makes the current Spalletti side, so prone to this similar pattern of play where with Nainggolan, without Nainggolan, we're still culpable to being sterile going forward? What do you reckon it is?
I don't know about sterile going forward. I think they just really need to learn to play for 90 minutes, because it was obvious that against Torino, the first half, I don't think anybody had any issues with the way that they played. They were dominant, and Torino just were not in it. And I guess against Bologna, as you alluded to, the first half performance wasn't great. But I think that just says a lot about Serie A in general, that you're never going to find an easy opponent. And Inter confronted two of their bogey teams in the first two rounds, and Sassuolo were excellent against Inter, and they just hadn't really molded together, and Spalletti hadn't really found the key to success, I think, in that first match. And against Torino, I think they just switched off. They didn't come out in the second half. It allowed Torino really to run riot, and in the end they were kind of lucky to get away with a point. But
you don't think it's symptomatic of a certain something? It's just this is how the cookie crumbles in the game. It's not symptomatic of something within the squad or within the tactics of the current rendition of Inter?
I don't know. It's difficult to compare like last year's team and this year's team. I mean, because really there's a lot of new faces. And so, I mean, I know what you're alluding to. I know that there's always been a talk about how Inter have they haven't got that winning attitude and that confidence, and they're so easy to break down mentally. And if there's a lot of pressure from the media, or whatever it is, are they the anti-Juve? Who are they? What's expected of them as well? And this season, definitely, there's a lot expected from Inter. But and last season, when they were doing so well, they I don't know. It was the match against Bologna when they drew. That was their first time they lost points, and then after they did so well, I think against Juventus, it all just crumbled.
Right, Will. Do you have anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Marco about something that I've been sort of debating quite a lot in my head since the transfer window closed, and that's this idea of a best 11. Because I think it's been difficult really to work out what to expect in terms of starting lineups going forward this season, because we've had players in the first few weeks that haven't been fit, or people coming back from the World Cup, and so Spalletti hasn't had a huge amount of choice. He's kind of had to just pick what he's got and adapt to that. But last year we pretty much knew what team was going to go out every week simply because there were no options. This year there are more options, but I'm still wondering how all of these attacking players in particular are going to fit together. So I wanted to ask, do you think it's a problem that there's no clear best 11, or do you think that there is a clear sort of starting a starting point from which Spalletti can rotate? Do you think there's an obvious way to fit all these players together, assuming everyone's fit and no one's suspended, or will it just be sort of a constant rotation given all the games that we've got this season?
I would say that the latter. I can't really see Spalletti following, say, like a Sarri model, where he just sticks to his starting 11 the whole season and very rarely tinkers with it. I can't see that he's going to be doing that much. I don't know. I think Spalletti would be a little bit worried about the number of wingers and players with the characteristics of Perisic, Candreva, Keita. And I think he even used Asamoah in that role for a bit. There's too many players, I think, that are a little bit out wide. There's no one in real playmaker role, and because we hadn't seen it until this weekend when the player behind the centre forward was Nainggolan, and he just was capable of pushing the team forward and helping out and distributing the ball, and really the man of experience, the real Serie A leader of this team. And it was quite incredible for his first Serie A match for Inter. He managed to do that. So I think, going back to your question, Will, I think Spalletti is going to have to rotate his team around Nainggolan. I just can't see any other player with his characteristics and his strength and his ability, not just to score, but also just to help the team push forward and attack like Nainggolan has.
Interesting. Fulvio, do you have a point you want to bring up?
Yeah, why not? I would like to ask Marco. Hello, Marco. Ciao. About this. Okay, to me it was a very an ugly game practically in the first 60 minutes. I saw Bologna that was pretty locked up in their half, and on the other side, Inter struggled to find some ideas. Practically, we built some chances on Bologna's mistake, and I noticed that when the situation was like this, we start to play down the wings. And the issue was that playing down the wings mean crosses inside the box, but Icardi was not there. There was Keita, that is definitely not the it's not a forward that can practically go with a header or something like that. So for me, it's not a coincidence that Inter found his first goal. Playing in the center with short and quick passes, with all the attack practically that move without the ball. My question is about this. Is about this kind of comfort zone in which Inter keep entering when it's not able to find some room into the game for chances to play down the wings. And it's something that is predictable, and I had the impression that it was exactly what Bologna expect in their side. So, do you think that Inter should dare something more into the season? Because playing down the wings is something that was very utilized the last season, but at some point became very predictable. So, do you think that Inter needs to dare something more and exit this comfort zone of playing down the wings?
I don't know. I think there is that option now with Lautaro Martinez to be as a second striker. Maybe the temptation for Spalletti to change formation and, as you suggest, maybe have somebody else in the middle and maybe not rely so much on that predictability of the wings. I think last season, though, if you look at it, Icardi scored almost half of Inter's goals, and that was primarily from excellent crosses from Perisic or Candreva or Rafinha coming in. And I think that was what Spalletti was really happy about. He knew that he had a real centre forward, so with an incredible conversion rate, and so that kind of style of play was bearing fruit. So why would he change that? This season he's got a few more options, but I don't know. I don't know how tempting it's going to be to change it. Predictability or not, I think if it's paying dividends, it's a style of play that he's managed to instruct his team to play well and to follow his style. I think it's not going to, and it also depends on the opponent that they're playing, I think, and we're going to see it when we find out how Inter really are when they take on Tottenham and the big guns. I think the draw is pretty favourable for Inter in Serie A, and so looking down the line, they don't have too many tests. They don't have too many tests. Excuse me. So that match against Tottenham is probably going to be the first real showcase of what the Inter is made of, and he may then, experiment a few times before that match to see what formation Spalletti would like. But I don't know. I'm probably more interested to see how well he can mould that 4-2-3-1 formation that he used last season with the new players, and see how well a player like Nainggolan and then the new signing Versaliko, Samoa, we'll see how they fit into that style of play as well. So I don't know about the predictability. I think teams, if they follow the coach and they know the way that his style of play is, then they can break down any opponent.
Right. You mentioned the Champions League there. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because it was, as predicted, as expected, it was a really difficult Champions League group with PSV Eindhoven, Tottenham and Barcelona. How big do you think Inter's chances are of going through to the second round?
Well, I think just looking at the results from yesterday, Tottenham losing a bit of a shock result. I don't know. I don't know. I look forward to seeing 3 excellent games at the San Siro. I can say that much. So definitely happy about that. Finally, Champions League comes back to Milan, and so definitely happy. But I can't see why Inter can't think positive about this group. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be too much of a disappointment if they come third either, because they know that they've got Tottenham and Barcelona ahead of them. PSV, I assume that they need to absolutely win at home and do their best to get all 3 points in Holland as well. But from the team's point of view, I think Spalletti would be absolutely delighted with the draw, and it will, I think it'll give them not only the motivation to know how great it is to beat either Tottenham or Barcelona and really put themselves back in the limelight as far as European football is concerned. But then, I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as it was with the debut in the Europa League, when they were absolutely outdone by some very poor opponents. And so I think that was the last venture into Europe was so disastrous that I'm sure players like Icardi will remember that not very fondly at all, but they'll try to avoid that kind of circumstance as well. So I think even a third place for Inter is positive.
Before I let you go, I just wanted to briefly ask you, from place 6 to 1, predict this year's Serie A and also the Capocannoniere.
After 3 matches, that's pretty cruel.
Well,
I don't know.
Come on.
Well, one of them's pretty easy.
Yeah, one of them's pretty easy. Yeah. Come on.
The Capocannoniere. You think? Ooh.
Definitely Catania.
I was going to say Christoph Piontek, but 3 goals scored every 34 minutes. I
was trying to think of someone who'd scored loads in the first 2 weeks. I don't think he'd scored the winner the week before. Anyway, that would have been a better answer.
He scored again yesterday. And who else? Our former Inter player as well. What's his name? Marco
Benassi.
Yeah.
Benassi, yeah. So So come on, 6 to 1. Come on.
Okay.
Not letting you go. Not letting you go.
Who's going to come in the first 6 places? Is this what you're asking me to name, right?
Yeah, 6 to 1. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're going to record this and you're going to come back up.
All done ours already, so we're all in this together.
Exactly, we're all in this together. Yeah.
I'm interested to know what yours is, Will. So, do you remember?
Well, I pretty much just threw the 6 names up into the air and then read them out in the order they landed because I couldn't decide.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm going to go Sassuolo.
Wow.
And then I will put in Lazio. And I think Roma, Napoli, Inter, Juve.
Okay, so
Milan are
7th. Okay.
No, I don't rate Milan.
Okay.
So you can come back again.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, given Squincy, the Sassuolo owner, being such a Milan fan, Milan kind of is in your top six, so I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
If people want to follow you on Twitter, where do they find you? What's your handle?
Yeah, handle is Marco27, MARCO27. So I'd love to hear from everyone that listens in around the world. Thanks for inviting me, Nima. Once again, always a pleasure to be on such a great podcast, and all the best with SempreInter.com.
Thank you very much, Marco, and I'm always so happy when it's you when you're commentating, because I think you guys do an excellent job. You and the entire team, you and Owen Nielsen and Richard Whittle and Paul Visca and all the rest of you. All of you are great. Keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot, Nima. I'll pass on all the good words. Thanks.
Take care. Ciao. Right, so I wanted to let's continue because I have a few things I wanted to discuss about the this Bologna game, and for me it was more an issue of this 4-2-3-1. I think is, I mean, we've seen Inter play a three-man defense in the first two matches, and I think that was kind of, or not maybe the first two matches, but against Torino, I'm not a big fan of the three-man defense, and to me it felt like Inter played against Bologna like a team that was comfortable, that a team that was playing, that knew what they were supposed to do. And obviously, sure, the first half was hardly champagne football, but Inter were in control, and I felt it was only a matter of time before they broke the deadlock. I do agree with what you said, Fulvio, that I think this is a game that Mauro Icardi would have loved to be a part of, because I think these are the kinds of games where he's so lethal. He just gets one shot and he scores. But I'm keen to hear what you guys think about this three-man versus four-man defense. Fulvio, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's okay. First thing first. I think that Spalletti is really waiting to implement this three-man defense. I think that this is in his mind since the day one of the season, and I think that actually it was okay. And the only thing is that how can I say? I think that was some problem of form, of athletic condition, because if you think about it, I think that the match against Torino was perfect, and Torino is a good team actually for the Serie A. Was perfect for the first 35 minutes, and start to fall apart practically when the midfielder went out of condition. And I'm talking about Brozovic, Vecino. So many people claimed about the needs of Spalletti to substitution like Vecino, Gagliardini, because Gagliardini is very dynamic. So they can settle that. I don't think that makes a difference, a big difference, and I don't think that this victory against Bologna was due to the change of the tactic. I mean, not only because you cannot know about your defense, because practically defense was never committed into this game. Even though Skriniar and De Vrij went well, focused and clean in their style of play, so went well. But actually, Bologna was not a tough side. So my thought is that we should continue with the four-man defense until our key players are in perfect shape. And after that, we can start to implement the three-man defense. Even though I think that this is something that could happen twice into the same game. So you can start with four-man, but you now have the players. You had only the player also last year. But this year is different because you have a lot of players that could play in different positions. So I think that you can propose twice this tactic into the same game. But I think that the team at the moment should play with a four-man defense. Now we have the stop for the national teams. So time to play, even though 11 players will be away. Time to train, not time to play, and something can be improved. But I think that at least for the Serie A, the 4-man team at the moment is better, and then probably in October or November will be different. While I will try to play with the 3-man defense into the Champions League, where the game is more dynamic, and you need to have a good rhythm. And of course, the rhythm that Inter had in Bologna at least for the first half, not for the first half, but at least for the first 60 minutes, is not acceptable into the Champions League. That is typically something that go really faster.
That's a really interesting point. I think, that's really interesting to hear. 3-man defense.
Has Nima disappeared?
No, sorry. I just said I think that's really interesting, because that's an interesting point you raised there, Fulvio, because, why not? 3-man defense in the Champions League is a much more dynamic, obviously, because Barcelona and Tottenham will not play like Bologna. They will obviously go for the win. So why not? I think that's a really interesting point. Mo, what do you think? Are you also where are you on the fence on this 3-man versus 4-man defense? Mo, are you there? Okay. Will.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, now I
can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. I must have had it on mute by mistake. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay, hang on. Let me ask you again, because I need to edit this part out. Okay. Mo, where are you on the fence regarding this 3-man, 4-man defense?
Look, as a general rule, I'm not a big fan of this 3-man defense. Generally, it's a personality thing. It reminds me of old Egyptian 3-5-2 football that was generally quite locked down, boring. So, but I also recognize that 3-man defense is like Fulvio said, in its new shape, something that can be very, very dynamic and liberating and tactically a bit more malleable. It gives the rest of the non-defensive players more options and gives the defenders a bigger role to play in build-up. What I like about it, for the most part, in the particular case of Inter, is going back to what we discussed with Marco earlier, and this almost natural reversion to wide play when all else fails, just spread out wide and cross in. When you play a 3-man defense, the wing backs are already so wide, it forces the front line to play narrow, and it actually squeezes Perisic and Politano or Candreva or whoever is on the right flank in further closer to Icardi. So it would give us this more demanding presence in the box. So again, like, objectively speaking, I agree with Fulvio. If we are to at all have any Champions League get out of the group aspirations, or like present ourselves well in quite a tough group, then maybe the 3-man defense, as probably has been the case, which is Spalletti has been planning for a while, is probably more apt for Europe. But then the 4-man defense for the Serie A seems to be a better way of lining up against these sides, to just sit back and build a wall, and that's it.
Will, where are you on this?
Well, I don't really have a preference between 3 and 4 in principle. I think the task of any coach is to get the best out of the group of players that he has. So there'll be some squads that are better suited to playing with the 3. There's some squads that are better suited to playing with the 4. And I think another thing you need to say is that the kind of looking at football in terms of numbers is kind of getting ever less sort of. It's coming a bit more irrelevant, because it's the space and the movement that really matters. It's the timing with which you move. There are teams that start with 1 and then will do another in the second half. There's teams that play a 4 when they attack and then a 3 when they defend. So it's difficult really to make these kind of sort of sweeping conclusions. But as far as Inter, I would say that we have the players to do both. So the fact that we're not entirely sure is not necessarily a bad thing. because it can also surprise opponents. You know, I was listening to Di Francesco the other day, and Roma are not doing very well at the moment, but he said that, you know, the ability to change system is a sign of, you know, intelligence. It's a good thing. It's a sign of versatility. So I think we'll see both. But I think the one problem that you can have with a back three is that it takes quite a long time to coach. I think more than a back four, because you've got to get the transition between kind of back three, back five sort of sorted out. And so that requires time. And we're not going to have a huge amount of time this year, given that we're playing every Tuesday and Wednesday in the Champions League now. So I think Spalletti will be a bit disappointed that he hasn't had, for instance, Nainggolan and a couple of other players sort of fully fit all the way through pre-season, because I think otherwise it would have been a bit easier to see us play with a back three. Because it's kind of, you know, if you don't sort of get the shuffling and the movements right, you can very quickly become a five, and then you never get up the pitch. So I think it's a little bit more intricate, but in theory, I like both. You know, I think the other problem with the back three is that you do slightly weaken Perisic's powers on the left, because he can play a wing back, he can play in the two number 10s behind Icardi, but that's not where he does his best stuff. But on the other hand, if you play with this sort of 3-4-2-1, sorry, that Spalletti used so much at Roma, then you can maybe have Lautaro and Nainggolan together, which is a bit harder when you play with the two wingers and then a man behind Icardi. So, you know, it kind of goes back to what I said before when the question that I posed to Marco. You know, there's a lot of options this year. I'm not sure what the best one is, because we haven't seen, you know, there hasn't been a period yet this season that everyone has been ready. Small. Sorry? It's
a small sample size anyway to judge from so far.
Yeah, exactly. So we only had 3 games and a handful of pre-season matches. So I don't know. I think we'll see both. But going with a back four, while you're not necessarily up to speed with how a back three should be played, I think sounds like a good idea. So if you're asking me the Parma match, maybe we should go with a 4. But I don't have a huge opinion on this. I don't think it makes a massive difference to us. You know, remember last year, the last sort of 2 months of the season, we played with a back three a lot of the time, with Cancelo kind of moving wide. So
yeah, right. And many people didn't know about that, actually.
I did it. For me, it's a bit different. For me, it's like this. Look, it's one thing when you start with a back four and then you sink into a back three like we did last season, with Cancelo becoming a wing back and D'Ambrosio cutting in from the left centrally and forming a 3-man defense. That's something different that just falls naturally, similarly to when Inter under Jose Mourinho had Maicon on the right side, gallivanting down the right, and Kivu who dropped deeper. That's fine, but I just feel that this Inter side, given what Spalletti himself said after Torino and what he said after Sassuolo, that this Inter side is a side that, you know, that has some sort of mental weakness, that they fall back into mistakes they made last year and weaknesses they had last year, which he thought they had overcome. He said that going in a press conference going into this Bologna game. I think a root of that has to do with insecurity. And I think playing with a back four gives a sense of security to this team. And I think for Spalletti to start experimenting and moving to a back three this early on in the season with so many new players in this team, I think that's a mistake. I think playing with a 3-man defense moving forward after a few months when everyone is settled and gelled together, and especially in the Champions League, when you play against teams that will attack you more and open up more, I think that's where it might become much more useful. But in the Serie A, given how every team except for Roma, Juve and Lazio will defend against us, I think playing with a back four gives this team a sort of tactical and a mental cool and calmness and security, and that's why I prefer the 4-man defense in the Serie A. Right, we're talking about the Champions League, and I'm pretty curious to hear what you guys think of the different games. I mean, personally, when I was looking through the games, I was thinking 6 points against PSV, a win at home against Tottenham, a draw away against Tottenham at Wembley, and then maybe if we're lucky get a point against Barcelona, that should be enough to get second place. How do you feel, Fulvio, about the Champions League draw? Do you think, how big are Inter's chances of going through?
I think that it's a fair draw if you think that Inter was in the fourth pot, and there's something average when you are in the fourth pot. I think that the chances are not so high, but even not so low. I think that it's crucial to the start is crucial, because in the start you have Tottenham home and you have PSV Eindhoven away. So that means that you need to aim for the victory in both games, because after that Barcelona will be tough. I don't know actually in San Siro if we are already go settled for a defeat. I don't think so, but I'm not expecting something different from a defeat in the Barcelona away match in Camp Nou. And by the way, do you know, guys? You probably know, but do you remember that the Barcelona away match comes in the middle of the derby and the away game match with Lazio?
Yes, I have seen. I have noticed this.
And the match also comes 4 days before El Clasico for Barcelona.
Yeah, right. So really tough, and that means that practically you need to go in Barcelona for the match day 5 and match day 4. Sorry, you need to go there at least with I think at least 7 points, because I think that is very tough to have a positive result in Wembley. And after that, you have PSV Eindhoven in San Siro, but it's the last match. So in the last match, probably the tables are already made. So I think that it's crucial that you win with Tottenham and or at least try to win against Tottenham, and definitely need to win in the Netherlands. And after that, you're gonna see. But actually, my sensation are pretty good, because I don't think there is nothing to lose. I think that the Champions League of this year is for Inter to get used to this kind of matches, because if you think about it, not a lot of our players are used to play this kind of match. So we need to get used to that. And after that, we're gonna see if we can go ahead. You can go with a third place, and after that, try to understand if you have some chances into the Europa League. That is something that we can consider. But I think that Inter should aim for the knockout stage. And I think that Tottenham is more worried than Inter at the moment, because for Inter was practically take for granted to find a big team into the second tier, into the second pot. But for Tottenham was definitely not granted to take a big team into the fourth pot. So I think that the draw was unlucky for Tottenham especially, and not for Inter.
Interesting point. Mo, what do you think? How big do you think Inter's chances are? I mean, you don't have to give a percentage-wise, but I mean, what do you say?
I really like what Fulvio just said about Tottenham. They're definitely sweating more than we are about the draw. Look, I look at the draw and I think, you know what, you're in the Champions fucking League, you know. So if you're in the Champions League, you're playing these. You must be playing these teams, and I'm not so concerned about Tottenham. We've seen English teams, you know, the stress and the strain of the Premiership is so tough on these guys that it's difficult for them to maintain focus. And we also know that Tottenham have particularly, their squad isn't very deep. So I think, you know, Tottenham are, in terms of like players and level of quality in the squad, are pretty much on par with Inter. The only difference is that Tottenham are maybe 2 or 3 years ahead in their cycle than we are in ours. So they are definitely more likely to qualify in second than we are. However, that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't. So I'd say maybe our chances are just under about 50-50, you know, maybe like 45-55, 40-60. but we definitely have a good shot at getting out of the group, and we should have a crack at it because, we're Inter. We're Inter, and we've been playing below our potential for a couple of years now at least. And hopefully, if everybody gets their head in the right place, this squad can really express itself properly in Europe, away from the stress and like you say, the anti-Juve headlines, the Gazzetta this, the Corriere that, whatever, and hopefully play with no pressure. And if that's the case, then we have a good shot at getting out of the group.
Nima, may I add something? Go to Will. Yes, I just want to add, because I forgot that. I just want to add that I'm really glad that we were not put into the Group D with Lokomotiv Moscow, Porto, and Schalke.
For sure.
Of course, there is the easiest group of the Champions League, the less quality group of the Champions League. But this is something that can twist for Inter. So first, the first reason is that the more easy is the group for Inter, and the less are the chances to go ahead for Inter. And the second, I'm glad to have avoided the German side Schalke, because Schalke is a bloody nightmare for Inter since 20 years.
Yep, agreed. I remember the UEFA Cup final, and so do you. And we also remember the Champions League. Yeah, Schalke is our European Torino and Sassuolo for us. It's in Europe, it's like that. Will, before I let you ask, I want you to analyze the group. I want to ask you, given what happened in the summer, how big are the chances that when we play Barcelona, Malcolm and Vidal will score 2 goals each and we'll lose 4-0?
What about Rafinha scoring the winning goal?
Of course. I mean, Rafinha, Vidal, and
Malcolm.
Can I raise the stakes, Nima?
Go for it. Raise them.
You know who signed for PSV this summer?
Yes.
That's the nightmare we need to watch out for.
True.
Trent Sainsbury has signed for PSV this summer. So if anyone's going, if there's an X or a near miss in the Mercato that's going to castigate us, it will be him. It'll be the kangaroo.
It'll be our kangaroo. He'll score the winner that knocks Inter out of the Champions League. No, but I mean, what do you, just really quickly there, Will? How do you see this group? Are you like Fulvio? Did you also want to avoid that group, or are you happy with the draw? What are you looking?
No, I'd be lying if I said that when we got to the pot 4 draw, I wasn't looking at Group D thinking, that might be quite nice. But it is absolutely the case that I completely agree with what Fulvio said about the easier the draw, the riskier it is for Inter, because we'd have something to lose in that group. We don't have anything to lose in this group, really. Obviously we could lose 6-0 at the Camp Nou, and that would be not very nice. But if we didn't go through, that's kind of what most people have expected. And we thrive when we're the underdog. Look at the last game of last season. That was the perfect. I keep thinking that's possibly the only way we could have finished 4th. We had to concoct this sort of final day scenario where we were in it, but we were up against it. It's like this sort of 1 in a million circumstance that got us in. But that's another matter. We don't have a great chance, but I don't think anyone is unbeatable at San Siro. I don't rate Barcelona. This 3 years they've gone out in the quarterfinals, and they are becoming ever more dependent on Messi. And obviously, if you've got Messi, that's not such a problem. But I think they're beatable. They're a pretty normal side now in terms of Europe's elite. I mean, we don't have any long away trips. That's good. Roma have got to go to Moscow, I think, which could be a problem in terms of league matches. We've got nothing to lose. Let's just do it. It's the Champions League.
I like that. I like that.
It's the Champions League. It's not a sandpit. You have to play the big boys.
That's true. I like it. Great. That's awesome. Right. I just let's move on to something not as positive, but this is something that I've been dreading to talk about on Studio Inter, and I've actually avoided talking about it on Studio Inter, but it seems that this is the monster that unless you talk about it, it just doesn't go away, because the ogre himself, Luciano Moggi, refuses to shut up and peddles these lies about Calciopoli. Now he went out recently talking about how Juventus should never have pleaded guilty. They should have fought this because blah blah blah. I mean, Fulvio, as before we get into the facts and all that, just briefly, how do you keep your head from exploding whenever that man opens his mouth and peddles a bunch of bullshit and lies, and all the all the Juventini and all the ignorant people out there who think they're Perry Mason because they watched Matlock with their grandmothers, think they understand the law?
Yes. First, let me say that being Italian, I know this kind of dynamic, and the fact is that in the Italian culture, the fact is that when something is guilty, and that some people want not to be guilty, the theory is that all are guilty, so equals nobody is guilty. Practically, this is the culture in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's something that happens. It happens in all the things that spread the news in Italy, practically. So it's something that is very eradicated into our culture, unfortunately. So about the story, I think there's not so much to add, because the story for me was closed 12 years ago, and was closed when Juventus go and propose something that practically they accept to be guilty, to not have a worse punishment than the Serie B. And I think that when Juventus acted like that, the story was finished. So the point is that Moggi is like it's something that could raise the business of the newspapers, of course. Like when you have a murderer, and it's the same thing, right? When you have a murderer, the people are really passionate about the story, and so you try to bring up the story more and more, to have also this to make your business practically. And I think that's the strategy. So I don't know, guys, if you last week talk about what happens in the northern Italy 2 weeks ago with Moggi. And if you didn't talk about it, I can just make a quick recap.
Go for it.
Yeah. So practically, this happened in the northern Italy, in the city of Rovigo, that is located in the northeast of Italy. So happened that I think was the 22nd of August or something like that. Moggi was invited to talk into a public square in this little city that is Rovigo, to talk about sports. Right, so it was Rovigo Sports Festival, and Moggi was invited to talk. So the story was actually spreaded thanks to two people. One is Mr. Ivan Grozny, that is a journalist, and is an Inter supporter, of course, but is a journalist and was interested to make Moggi some questions about something contradictory, right? Because the impression in the square that Moggi can make some monologue without anyone to tell him anything about any topic. So Mr. Grozny make this kind of uncomfortable question, and in the meantime, supporters of Inter that is fairly known on Twitter, filming all the stuff and to spread the story on the Twitter. So this explodes when the supporter write to the Olympic Committee, the Italian Olympic Committee on Twitter, because in the headline of the event there was written that the Olympic Committee was sponsoring the event, and this supporter write to the Olympic Committee, that is named CONI in Italy. Hey guys, you know that this is happening, and the Olympic Committee say no, we didn't know anything, and we are very angry about this. So now there's some dispute with the city of Rovigo. They want the Olympic Committee wants to sue the city of Rovigo for using the name and something like that. So it was very spreaded. But the most interesting thing of this story is when this story spreaded, the first thing that happened was that the second or third sports newspaper in Italy, which is called Corriere dello Sport, makes an exclusive interview with Moggi and put it into the headline. And so that means that when Moggi, for some kind of reason, is bring up into the news, all the newspaper try to get advantage of this. right? And this is something that should not be happening, but it continued to happening a lot of times in the last 12 years, and that's why or at least that's some of the reason, because this Calciopoli story will never end, because it's business practically, right?
You're absolutely right about that. But as a person who has a background in law, this pisses me off. I completely respect what you say about this being an Italian culture thing. Either everyone's guilty or everyone's innocent, and that's completely true. And you're absolutely right. That's an aspect of Italy that is quite horrible, to be honest. And it's one of those aspects that holds Italy back as a society, in the sense that, you know, either we're all guilty or we're all innocent. That kind of dynamic, like you said. For me, it's very simple. Inter were never tried and prosecuted of any wrongdoing. The phone conversations where Facchetti spoke to the Italian Referees Association, Bergamo, the president of that, those were listened to. Both the police and the prosecution in the first case against Juventus heard about it, decided that there was nothing there, and therefore they didn't continue to raise any legal proceedings against Inter. These are facts. This is not something I'm pulling out of my ass. This is something that is documented. It's police documents, it's court documents. So what happened is that when after Moggi pleads guilty, after all of them plead guilty, Moggi decides to fight this, and in the court of law, he raises this conversation, these so-called new evidences. And the district attorney, or the prosecutor, Stefano Palazzi, has a different opinion, legal opinion, than the previous one in the first trial, and thinks that yes, there should be an investigation against Inter as well. Now, because of a statute of limitations concerning these crimes, this was never raised into court. But statute of limitations means simply does not, you know, that doesn't mean that Inter were guilty or they were hid behind a legal technicality. No, the prosecution and the police had all of this evidence in front of them. They decided not to press charges against Inter based on it because there was nothing there. Moggi's own expert testified in that second trial, saying that Facchetti is not the one saying, give me Collina or whoever it is he names. He actually says it's Bergamo who mentions Collina's name. So therefore, the whole thing is just a complete nothing burger. It's an utter disgrace that 12 years after Facchetti's death, a man who was known for his integrity, for fair play, that they keep dragging a dead man's name through the mud because in order to protect themselves. It's disgraceful. It's utterly disgusting. And I don't want to talk about it again because, as you said, Fulvio, so correctly, they pleaded guilty and they were sentenced for it. So there's no need to continue talking about it.
Yeah, right. But at the bottom of this, just let me add, then we go to the others. But at the bottom of this, let me add that in this story is very difficult to have a fair judgment because we're talking about supporters, right? So it happens all the time that when a team is guilty for something, the supporters is not accepting that. So or at least the Italian supporter, I don't know in other part of the world, but they start to say there's a plot against us. They want to, we are annoying to some people, so some people want to take us down and something like that. So it happens for Juventus for this Calciopoli story, but it happens also for the Milan supporters when was that young Gongley story with the sentence of the UEFA about Milan to be disqualified. And that happens also to Inter supporters in the first agreement with the financial fair play. So it's very difficult to have a fair judgment. It's like when you judge a penalty, right? A penalty is not a penalty for all the parts. If it's a penalty for your team, you accept that and you say yes, it was clear. But if it's a penalty against your team and it's the same, you say practically this is not clear. This is something that could happen, and there was no balance on the episode for our team, and it's something like that. So it's really difficult, probably impossible, to have a fair judgment by the supporters, and it's probably something that will never be settled for this reason.
Probably. Right. I don't think Mo and Will would want to talk about this because I know I don't know anyone likes to talk about this. Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute as well as rip the piss out of something or someone in the world of football. Starting with the Moggi of the week, which will be presented by Mr. Fulvio Santucci.
So here we go with our worst story of the week, and it comes from Italy. It comes for the Serie B. It's the second tier of Italian football, if you don't know, but if you have Mr. Will Beckman, which is very passionate about this, you should know. Before starting the story, a quick background of the situation, because it was a very tough summer for the Serie B. The Serie B last year was composed by 22 teams. And this year is composed by 19 teams. And this happened because 3 teams went bankruptcy or didn't meet the requirements to be in this championship this year. And so that was some difficult decision and some teams that were included in the first place. For example, Catania was included in the first place and had a party with that. But after that, the decision was to not include Catania and to not include any other teams and to go with 19 teams. So something very confusing, actually. So in this situation, the Serie B championship began last week, but into the second match day of the Serie B, that was the match that for the 2 teams, Cosenza versus Verona. Cosenza is a team from southern Italy, Calabria, and come back to the Serie B after 15 years. And what happened? Practically, the game was awarded to Verona by forfeit. And this happened because the pitch of Cosenza was not regular, according to the referee. So could you imagine that? First of all, our Serie B team, which is a professional team, is not able to guarantee a pitch, and this is very disgraceful in the first place. But that was also the worst part of the story. That was this 10,000 people, 10,000 Cosenza supporters that were very excited about their team to come back to the Serie B after 15 years. That practically wait outside the stadium for more than 1 hour. Without any kind of communication, and also we can mention the I think 90 supporters of Verona that travel, and I can assure you that it's a very long travel from Verona to Cosenza, like 1,000 kilometers or something like that. And after that, the referee decided that the match cannot be playing. But another worst part came when the images were spread throughout the web. Because you can see that the pitch was actually not green but brown, really brown. The line the line of the pitch were not done practically. So practically a pitch without the line, and the bench also is not your usual kind of bench, because the chair was practically the plastic chair that you can find into a canteen or something like that. So yes, was very disgraceful. So I think that this is something that could not happen into the Italian football, and this is something that should be settled. Also, the mayor of the city, Cosenza, was interviewed about this and said once again, Nima, there's a plot against us because it really happened. There's a plot against us because the inspector of the championship went here for 10 or 12 times and also gave positive feedback. So I have and these are the mayor words. I have the impression that there was a plot against us. I have the impression that Verona wants to be awarded by forfeit the match since the beginning, something like that. But actually, Cosenza citizen and Cosenza supporters did not believe him and start to make a shitstorm practically on the social network, by saying you're disgraceful, it's a shame, and so on and so forth. So I think that this is an incredibly disgraceful story, and fairly deserve our Moggi of the week.
Indeed, wow, that's that's unbelievable. Right,
We should talk about Bologna's pitch as well. I mean, this isn't just a defensive problem. I mean, Italy, the media have really been hammering home this Serie A is back line throughout the summer, but there is no infrastructure in this country. I mean, the pitches and the stadiums, they are humiliating for a league that thinks it's one of the best 5 in the world. I mean, there's so much work still to do.
Agreed, 100%.
And actually, another match in Serie B.
I was going to say Lecce.
Lecce.
That was the one early in the week that was more likely to be called off, I think, and then it ended up going the other way around. But there was no difference between the pitches from what I saw. I'm going to go mad, so let's just go on.
Solo in Italia. Only in Italy. Right. It's part of the charm and it's part of the curse. Right. Let's move on to something slightly more comedic or embarrassing, depending on who you ask. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Will Beckman.
Yeah, and this week I thought we'd go back to the origins of the Frog, because the Frog came from the strange happenings that occurred to Andrea Ranocchia on the pitch 4 or 5 years ago, when he'd do something thinking he was Superman and end up looking like a complete idiot. So this is very much true to that particular the reasons why this prestigious award was brought in. And so this week's award, I thought, needed to go to the man that one tabloid quite fittingly described as Alice in Blunderland, because I think Alisson is one of the best keepers in the world. We all saw it last year. We've seen that Roma fans are already missing him. They're not entirely convinced by the guy they brought in to replace him. So this is not a judgment on him as a keeper. But I think for the first time since he came from Brazil, he has been caught out with one of these fancy tricks that he does inside his own box, and it looked pretty terrible. Because he did this a lot in Italy, but he never seemed to get away with it. He'd be flicking the ball around with his foot. He'd be sort of doing back heels, rabonas, all this kind of stuff, and it would seem brilliant. He'd be the samba star. It was fun, but he finally got found out this weekend. Liverpool playing Leicester, and he had the ball. He could have done one of 3,000 things, but he chose to try a dribble, and he got caught out, and Leicester scored. Fortunately, it didn't cost Liverpool because they won, but I think Alisson was very, very close to. He must have had this award at heart, because up until then I was not sure who to give it to, but I think in doubt you have to go back to your roots. So Alisson Blunderland is this week's Frog.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Right, let's move on to something slightly more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Mohamed and Nassar.
Oh my God, he is beautiful! He is beautiful, yeah!
So, guys, 2 weeks worth of episodes, so 2 Morattis this week, I guess. The first is watching the Champions League draw with Inter in it. Every fucking year it comes, and we're like sitting down, and everyone texts you, "Oh, did you see this? Did you see that?" And like, yeah, you don't give a shit because it's Napoli, Roma, whatever. And this year, immediately after the draw finished, I got like maybe 15 WhatsApp messages from different friends from all over the world, like, "Oh man, Inter is so screwed," or whatever. Like, how do you think about the group? And it's just so nice to actually be involved. In the same year, like Egypt got into the World Cup as well, so we were actually involved in that. So getting that feeling twice in 1 year was super fantastic. So one of my definite highlights in the past 2 weeks was the Champions League draw, sitting up, not sitting up late because it was at a fairly reasonable time for us here, but waiting for it and following it with a lot of vested interest. The other Moratti of the week has to be given to the Ninja. We spoke about him earlier with Marco Palmieri earlier when we dissected the Bologna match. A lot has been said by people here and there. I know. he's a 30. He's an old 30. He's a young 30. He's coming off one of his worst seasons. He's been injured with a muscular problem almost practically all of preseason. Is he a dud? Blah blah blah. Okay, so he came off injured, but in those 79 minutes, I think it was, that he played, we saw that there's absolutely no way this guy is not going to have a top. Like, if he stays fit, is not going to be the difference maker for the squad throughout the season. So, for coming out of the Bologna game for this week, it's definitely got to be Nainggolan.
Here.
I do hope that we fare slightly better in the Champions League than Egypt did in the World Cup. That's the only thing I would say. I was wrong about your comparison.
Yeah, no, I know.
The comparison would be if Nainggolan got injured on the eve of the Tottenham match on the first week.
Well, look, I mean, we go into the Champions League with Inter's reputation on our backs. Well, we went into the World Cup with Egypt's reputation anyway, so...
Okay.
Right. That was all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Marco Palmieri. Will, thanks for coming on again.
Sorry, yes, thank you. See you soon. Have a nice week, everyone.
And thank you, Mo.
Always a pleasure, guys. Yeah.
And thank you. And thank you, Fulvio.
Thank you, guys. It was really, really good to be here, and I hope to come back soon.
Well, until next week, don't forget to, because this show is now also available on YouTube, don't forget to give us 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you download us from. Click the subscribe. And until next week, my name is Nima Nerazzurri, wishing you all a good week. And sempre e solo Forza Inter.